Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Sharon Martin. In my social media circles, some call me Doc Martin, and those of you who remember the boots, sorry, I am not that company. I'm going to talk to you today about the book I wrote that is conceptually about bringing in the mystical for maximum power. I wrote this book as a guide for patients. I am a physician, and the idea to help them become more involved in their care and to be able to take control over their illnesses and their health challenges. But the concepts that I'm going to talk about today are really ones you can use for any situation in life. And you can remove health and put in worries about X, worries about Z. And then that's those techniques and those ideas that I talk about, I think are wonderful for anybody to have a more vibrant life. So let's just begin. And on the next slide, I want to tell you a little bit about who am I. I'm Dr. Sharon Martin. I am a physician. I'm an internal medicine physician. I trained at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Prior to that, I have a graduate degree, a PhD in physiology, and I was a research scientist and faculty at Emory University before going to medical school. And at that time, I won the university-wide teaching award. So I was an academician and teacher before I went to medical school. I think probably every 10 years, I get a kind of a new career going. Currently, I'm a staff physician at a rural clinic in South Central Pennsylvania. And this is a federally qualified rural health center. So my clientele are the socioeconomically challenged, but also, truthfully, salt of the earth. So I'm in a lovely rural setting, and actually during COVID, that was my sanity. And to come home, come past some farmlands, come past the horses in the pasture, and then everything is all right with the world. You probably sense that in nature yourselves. Once I was a physician and practicing, I found that there was more that I needed to feel that I was healing people, to feel that I was offering them some ability to heal. And I began to study in shamanic and energy medicine concepts. And then I realized that the average person can use many of these to amplify their ability to shift the destiny of a health challenge. And so I wrote the book, and you'll see that in the slide here on the side. I'm the author of Maximize Your Healing Power, Shamanic Healing Techniques to Overcome Your Health Challenges. And it was published in May by Inner Traditions. And I'm sort of proud to say it was in the first week, it was an Amazon bestseller. I think I am biased, I'm sure, but even when I step out of that and I look, this is a fun read. The ideas are fun, the exercises are fun, and my anecdotes from my life in mainstream medicine, I think, are at least eye-opening. So I would love it if you would buy that book, because I think you'll get a lot out of it. My spiritual mission, as I reflect over the years that I've been studying spirituality, is really to awaken people to join in to help heal the earth and the relationship with humans and the relationship within the universe. My personal mission, translator of the esoteric, and bring that information down into lay understanding. So that was the purpose of the book. And I hope that this talk does the same thing, that it shows you what could be very out there concepts and shows you how they are relevant in today's world. A typical patient visit, and you have all experienced this, the setting is industrial. It's not warm and fuzzy. The staff, especially after COVID and the busyness of the world, the staff are surly for the most part. I have to say, even my staff sometimes are not very warm and fuzzy. The whole encounter is rushed. It has limited room for talking about deep subjects, and oftentimes the patient does not feel listened to, does not feel heard, does not feel that they've had the time to express themselves, and does not really feel that they have a partner on their journey to trying to find some solution to whatever they're suffering from. This mainstream medicine is a mess. I'm in it. I can tell you, every time I hear somebody grumble, I get it. It's a mess. So from my book, I quote, "In this book, I share what I see as a gaping divide between Western medicine and indigenous shamanic and energy techniques, and then show you how I learned to see the bigger picture of medicine by looking through a lens of science combined with shamanism." Mainstream, let me just back up and say, I am a scientist. I am a physiologist. That was what my PhD was in. I love the inner workings of the body. I love the incredible connections between cells and organs and biochemistry. I love all that. And mainstream medicine is good at that. So from mainstream medicine, we can get targeted chemical therapies. They are now finding that certain diseases have different genetic predilections, and they target their medicine to get right up next, close and personal to that. Mainstream medicine is wonderful at surgical techniques. My nephew is a neurosurgeon, a vascular neurosurgeon. So imagine that you're not only doing this complicated brain stuff, but now you're doing this cutting edge, go in there and change the blood circulation to a tumor, go in there and remove a clot so you don't have a stroke. Mainstream medicine can do phenomenal things. There are immunologic treatments. In fact, many of the cancer therapies today are monoclonal antibodies. And whereas a person with multiple myeloma or melanoma may have died very quickly, they are now living longer. Lung cancer, the same. So mainstream medicine is great. Treatment of infections. And we've heard in the news, if you haven't experienced, I hope you haven't, that we have infections that require significant antibiotics. And mainstream medicine is working very hard to develop new antibiotics. And they're very good at trying to pick up cancer so they can prevent you from dying from a runaway cancer. Mainstream medicine, though, could do better. We all know that. Mainstream medicine is not so good at working holistically. It does not always consider the individual in the whole. Psychiatry probably does this better than regular practitioners, but the whole mind, body, spirit connection. In fact, when I reflect on shamanic healing, and I'm speaking generally, a shaman views the individual as a key and integral cog in the wheel of the tribe. So everything is taken from that perspective. And that's what mainstream medicine could do better at. Mainstream medicine could do better at having the client be more proactive. We have developed over the years, I'm going to say at least 50 years, if not 70, a very top down, don't worry, honey, I'm the doctor, you just let me handle it. That idea, that way of being, that dynamic doesn't cut it anymore. Mainstream medicine is just now starting to open their eyes to nutritional aspects, and they need to do better at the spiritual and metaphysical considerations. And that's why the indigenous, the medicine men and women of the ages, they walked in the relationship of human to the unseen world, to the rhythms of nature, to the galaxy, to the constellations. And those rhythms, as you'll see as we talk more today, those rhythms are important. So from my book, nothing is worse than feeling under the control of a system that is terribly broken. This example, which is an example I gave in the book, could be replaced by any symptom, any office visit, and the complaint would still be the same. Too much money, too little personal time. You don't feel heard or listened to. You're confused about what to do to take care of yourself, and you're angry that you have to leave your health in the hands of this broken mess. Yeah, we've all felt that. I know that. So on the next slide, I want to take you on a little it was my epiphany gifted to me by a lovely, lovely young man. I want to tell you the story. So sit back and listen. It has some woo-woo moments, and truthfully, as we bring spirituality in, this encounter had bigger implications than just the literal world. So I opened a rural clinic, actually more remotely than where I work now, and I remodeled an old restaurant, spent a lot of money, saw patients. I had a partner, a nurse practitioner, who then left. So all of a sudden, there I am trying to juggle in enough patients to make enough money to pay the bills and pay the staff. And then it became a conveyor belt of doctor visits, which I personally hate. So it's Friday night, a week of exhausting one after the other after the other. I am exhausted. I am ready to go home. I believe it was November. And so the roads it's going to be dark and the deer are out and just everything. I just couldn't wait to get out of there, ready for the weekend. And down the hall comes my receptionist. We're talking 5:01, the doors close at 5:00, with a look on her face, very worried. I could tell something was up, and she tells me that a young man is up there and he wants to be seen. And my mind goes to, well, did he get bit by a dog? Does he have a wound? And she tells me that it's about anxiety. Well, I confess none of my thoughts were charitable. None, zero. Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. He doesn't have his own doctor? And then I start tripping out into the stages of what comes next in psychiatric issues in general practice. Is he anxious, or is he having a manic episode? Is he suicidal? Oh no, if he's suicidal or psychotic, I'm going to have to involuntarily commit him. That means calling the crisis delegate hotline, waiting for someone to call you back, getting another doctor on the phone to let you sign the papers, then calling the state police to have them come and cart him 40 miles to the nearest hospital. And these ideas are going on and on and on. And the last thing I wanted to do was have this hot potato of a challenge land in my lap. So down the hall comes this young man. And when I reflect on it now, 20 years later, he was filled with light. He was lovely, lovely, blonde, curly hair. He looked like a cherub. Just imagine that sweetness, that light, that sensitive. But at the time I was like, okay, come sit down and tell me what this is so I can decide if I have to call the state police. sit him down, and he starts to tell me about the dreams he has and that the dreams come true. And he's scared all the time because if he goes to sleep and he has a dream and he sees these things and they come true, he feels horrible. Things that might happen to his grandmother's friends, a car accident. And he sees this also in the daytime, but he is not sleeping and he is worried all the time. Well, as I'm listening to him, I'm thinking he doesn't sound psychotic. He has dreams, but he's not telling me he's hallucinating. He is reflecting on it and recounting it to me quite accurately. So I call his girlfriend back from the waiting room to come back, and I say, is this true? Is what he sees predictive? She says, oh, yeah. I said, has he always been like this? She said, oh, yeah. His grandmother is a Romany, meaning gypsy, who said when he was 3 years old that he had the sight. Well, this is a woo-woo moment, but I know that many of you have had these. All of a sudden, I have a knowing in the deepest part. Usually for me, it's on the left side of my head. It's like a voice from my higher self, from God, from spirit, from guardian angel. I don't know. All I know is it's something important talking to me that said, stop. Mainstream medicine cannot help him. If I admit him to the psychiatric ward, they're going to sedate him. They're going to put him on anti-anxiety. They're going to perhaps even think he's psychotic, put him on antipsychotics. And I'll digress a minute. My mother was bipolar. Antipsychotics made her a zombie. Now, also, she wasn't manic. So I get that. But mainstream medicine would label him as defective. And this voice in my head was going, stop. He is not defective. Now I'll digress a little bit on something else. I am not oblivious to the woo-woo in the world. My mother was, and my sister is unbelievably psychic, what we would call psychic, predictive, intuitive, deeply intuitive. And so if I think that somebody has these extrasensory perceptions, that doesn't freak me out. I'm not ready to squelch that idea. And again, this voice or this knowing in my head is saying, do not go to mainstream medicine. He is not broken. So I took a deep breath. I remember sitting there thinking, how do I help him? My toolbox as a physician does not fit his problem. How do I help him? And then a wave of knowing, again, coming from a deeper, higher source than my human mind, said to the young man, you are not broken. You are not crazy. You have a gift of the ability to sense things that other people can't sense. But where you're stuck is that this stuff comes bombarding you because you are open in your perception, and it bombards you, and then you're overwhelmed. Your challenge is going to be when you choose to open and let that information in. You need to take control of what you let in. Now, I have to confess, at the time I'm saying this was not a calculated, rational response. This was, and I'll use New Age terms, this was a download from spirit, because stuff was coming out of my mouth that I didn't think and calculate and plan. I said, you have to find someone in your family who has this gift and get them to teach you how to open when you choose and close at other times. But you are not mentally ill. As soon as I said that, the relief that came over this young man's face, his worry, his anxiety completely went away. And in that moment, I had a taste, and this was the beginning of my journey to study shamanic and other esoteric traditions. I had a taste of what it means to provide healing. And it had nothing to do with my Johns Hopkins MD, PhD toolkit. So this young man, for me, was a pivotal moment in my life. I hope for him that download of spirit made a difference. At the time when I watched him, and I watched how it came over him, the relief, and he left smiling as opposed to almost in tears, I feel this is a healing encounter. This is the real deal. And this is also where the discrepancies between what mainstream offers and what's really needed became glaringly clear. So I started to bring in the mystical. And I read a book. Alberto Villoldo wrote a book, Shaman, Healer, Sage. Something zinged, something caught me at a deep level. And I signed up for training with the Four Winds Society in the Peruvian shamanic tradition. And then I went on to study with other metaphysical and esoteric teachers and studied remote healing, what we call energy medicine. Although those of you who know Stefan Schwartz, who is a researcher and author and remote viewer himself, would tell you that his research shows there's no energy transfer. So we don't really know what it is, but we call it energy medicine. What did I gain from opening to the mystical? For me personally, I got a deeper spirituality. It renewed my connection to and my commitment to the earth and to humanity's place on the earth. And it gave me faith, a belief, because shamans can track out a destiny line and even shift your trajectory from one potential to another. So I saw tools to gather some measure of control over my destiny. And so I began to build. Now, I have to tell you, as a child of a dysfunctional father and a bipolar alcoholic mother, I didn't have a lot of faith. I was suspicious all the time, guarded most of the time. So this to me was so deeply, personally healing and beautiful. So anyway, the mystical, I love the mystical. This is a quote from my book. I believe there is a universal matrix of energy that we are all a part of and that we contribute to, and that has a divine intelligence. I believe the healing done at the level of the personal energy body is powerful, long-lasting, and accesses the source of physiologic illness. I believe we have a soul and that our souls communicate with spirit. I personally believe in reincarnation. I believe that life force and the intelligence permeates everything on the earth and in the galaxy. Sounds pretty delicious, doesn't it? So this next slide shows what I have come to call the sweet spot. Take this Venn diagram where you have Western medicine, shamanic rituals, and energy medicine. You bring those all together, and there is a sweet power in this middle section, and I'll show you more of that. What I call maximum medicine includes many ways of the indigenous, including the mystical and spiritual, while recognizing and using glorious scientific knowledge. When viewed as a three-circle Venn diagram, the center where energy medicine, Western medicine, and shamanic rituals blend and overlap, to me, is a focal point of immense understanding of human beings and great potency for healing. On this slide, you'll see a stylized logo of the Chicana symbol. The Chicana symbol is a stair-step symbol from the Andes representing the constellation of the Southern Cross. And it is used in indigenous cosmology. And that stair-step look to it is by default, in terms of tradition, traveled clockwise. So when I contemplated this symbol, I was so moved by the long-standing cosmological, it just transfixed me. And I had always seen in my patients the journey of change moving a lot like the stair steps. So there's this push and a jump and an elevation to something new, but then there's a plateau. And I used to get very frustrated with the plateau. It's like, come on, let's keep moving. But I know now that it's an integration, a time for everything to consolidate. And then the person surprises me. I've had this happen. Many patients surprises me, and boom, the next step up. My intuition is that change is a spiral journey, a lot like the indigenous medicine wheels, which we'll come to in a minute. And any life challenge can be seen through this spiral fashion. So I'll just say that I've been surprised by patients, because I remember bugging one guy for a long time as a type 1 diabetic, meaning he's absolutely dependent on insulin to get an insulin pump because he was not controlled. And I would pester him, and finally I gave up. And somewhere along the line, he said, I want to do an insulin pump. And his life changed for the better. So here I was on this plateau, pestering him and thinking all hope was lost, and boom, then it happened. So there's a time, as we know, time and place for everything. So we'll move to what I call many ways of seeing. And what I learned in my shamanic energy training, one of the key things that I learned was to shift my perspective. And there's many ways that I now see patients. And somebody said to me, well, how can you actually do shamanic work in a short office visit? Well, you can't actually do profound energetic techniques or visualizations that you might do, or journeys. But the main thing that shifted for me, which helped my way of explaining things to patients and my way of diagnosing and intuiting, was the different ways of seeing. So we're going to talk about, and I'm going to use the symbolic nature of a medicine wheel, which we'll see in a minute. We'll talk about the wheel of the directions, of the elements, of perception, of interactions, and inner tasks. And then a quote from my book. When I consider where someone is on each of the wheels, I'm reminded of the spiral nature and the fluidity of any situation. Now, most medicine wheels from the indigenous, especially for us in the United States, those who know about Southwest Indians, moving in the cardinal directions, south, west, north, and east, comes associated with colors. Certain tribes, the Lakota, have different colors, say, than the Navajo, different power animals. Some place it might be bear, other time it might be buffalo. But anyway, there's that symbolic spiral journey. The medicine wheel of directions. So this is a primary way I was taught to perceive things energetically for a person, taught by Alberto Villoldo. So the south direction comes, and again in Native American, it comes with a color, with a power animal, a totem, The South, when you consider the mythic journey, is where you face your problem. You're totally aware of it. The West is where you have the courage to undertake a change. The North is where you ask for help, usually from the ancestors in the Native American cosmology. And the East is where you see things from the new day. So let's just move on to the next is the medicine wheel of the elements. Now, traditional Oriental medicine is really good at this. I am not that good, but I do have a basic understanding. And in doing that understanding, I'm able to see things from this perspective. And let me give you an example. The element of fire, it's well known to be transformative. It's well known to have clearing, but it's also destructive. If I look at that from a medical point of view, I think about inflammation. I think about people with bad joints, rheumatoid arthritis, an infection where you're burning up, your joints are hot. Then you take water. Well, water is seen to be fluid, to be cooling, but may not have enough fixed or static component. But in medicine, I could see people as having, if I thought about the element of water, heart failure, where you hold too much fluid, swelling, in your legs, those are elements of water. Elements of earth, to me, somebody with bad arthritis whose joints are crippled and stuck and concretized, to me, that's too much earth, too much trapped in a fixed condition. And then air, you could have too much air, and that might be, say, in the stomach area. Many people complain, irritable bowel, too much gassy, and if I eat this, I'm bloated. Too little air, people with lung disease. So this is a very simplistic but nice way to look at somebody and think about the balance of their elemental energies. Somebody with a red hot swollen joint needs the cooling of water. Somebody who's concretized by their arthritis and stuck in the earth needs the fluidity of water and maybe even needs the lift of air. So that's one perception, okay, one way of seeing. The perspectives are another thing that Alberto taught me. When you're in the South direction by tradition, as he taught it, you are looking at the energetic of the literal world. Everything is exactly as it is. And you'll see that there are those of you who do client work, whether medical or behavioral health, even massage therapy, you will see people who are in the literal all the time. Then you have the emotional perspective. So somebody will come in and everything's about their pain. Everything is about what's wrong. Everything is about my back. It's just, you can feel the hot potato of that emotional wind up. Few people get to the spiritual. And I consider it, again, how I use my shamanic and esoteric training in my mainstream medicine is to remind people of their journey as a soul on the earth. Again, I tell them, this is my belief. It's not science. I believe we have a soul. You know, it's interesting. Every time I've said to the person, what do you think your soul's purpose is in all of this? Or do you have a sense of the bigger picture of this? If I try to move the person into the spiritual perspective, people, every single one that I've talked to, I can't think of one that hasn't, believe they have a bigger trajectory, a bigger current running through their life. And if I can move them into seeing that bigger and seeing perhaps a different lesson, then I can help move them out of the emotional or the literal. And then the energetic perspective is the one, another way of saying it in our common language or mainstream languages, you turn it over to God. So anyway, that's the perspectives. And I hold those all the time. It's what shamanic training did for me, is to really help shift somebody out of that emotional drama or being so stuck in the literal that they don't pull themselves up. So in my book, I give a lot of anecdotes of patient encounters, and I have changed genders, ages, elements, even combined, so composite patients, because it's very important to me to protect patient confidentiality. But I'll tell you an example of a patient who was stuck. I had somebody come in and tell me that they went and were found to have some prostate cancer, and they were seeing a doctor. And I said, "Oh, okay, well, what about the prostate cancer?" "Well, nothing." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, what do you mean nothing? So it was benign? It wasn't cancer?" "Oh, no, it's cancer at stage 4. I'm going, "Wait a second, it's stage 4, and you're telling me it's nothing." And I said, "Well, okay, so what's the plan?" "Oh, well, I guess I see the doctor." So here's my shamanic brain kicking in. You are floating in the ethers. You are in the airy zone, and you need to get yourself back to the literal world, because you need to be involved in the next steps that have to be taken, and you need to be present. So I said to them, "I'm going to talk to you that has nothing to do with science. It has to do with my spiritual belief, and you need to get back in the game. You need to get in the game because you got stuff to handle." And the next thing they say to me is, "Oh yeah, they're planning to have surgery to totally remove my prostate." Well, this patient who had been all, "Oh yeah, I saw the doctor on every," So here is where I use that shamanic training of the perspectives to assist the person to get fully present and connected to what they need to handle going forward. So that also went from my book, a quote: "Red flags were waving in my awareness. On the wheel of perspective, he was floating in the ether, out of the space of in the energetic perspective, surrendering his will and completely out of touch with the emotional perspective, and holding an overly literal perspective of my body is broken, but the surgeon will fix me. In my opinion, to grab hold of what was required medically to save his life, he would need to get his head in the game and down to the literal world." Each thought, by its very nature, a visualization of a beneficial change, thoughts can be brought forward into reality. And that's also what shamanism has taught me, is it matters what you think. It matters how you see your future. And what I've come to believe very strongly is in this next slide, is the benefit of including spirit, of the numinous, of the transcendent. So the spiritual and energetic perspective is the piece missing in mainstream medicine. And I think that we need to get it back. The awareness and the use of the power of consciousness. And I believe that consciousness is the frontier, that if mainstream medicine will incorporate it, will be huge in the ability to elicit healing. The missing piece is critical to shifting any life challenge. It's very hard when you are stuck in one human thought within your own thought process, unless you're very good at tuning in to your higher self and doing affirmations and basically self-hypnosis. You need the higher power. You need something bigger than yourself to ally with. And that's what the spirit component does. And nowadays, we're learning that what we called energy medicine is really the universal information field. And science can't really explain that, not yet anyway. But the mystics have known this, especially from India. They have known that there is a universal information field. That's where consciousness resides. And that's the part I would love if we want to talk about frontiers of medicine. Shamans recognize that everything is integrated, our bodies, our minds, our energy fields, and the world we share with nature and all its beings. The indigenous medicine men and women followed the rhythms of the seasons, the migration of the animals, when to harvest. That alignment of the tribe to the external forces is what modern day humans don't really do anymore. And I'd love to see us get that back. Once I had all these ways of seeing and medicine wheels of different approaches that were taught to me by Alberto and other teachers, then I intuited how patients and people in general facing a challenge can really tackle it. And these two next medicine wheels are ones that I intuited and what I sense, and I'll explain the first one to you. The medicine wheel of interactions. Now, again, by standardization, medicine wheels go clockwise. And by my particular standards, as I learned with training in the Four Winds Society, we start at the south direction. So these are intuited with those defaults. Some people start their medicine wheel in the east. In this conditions, we're starting in the south. The key component when you start, and this is a medicine wheel of interactions, I call it the medicine wheel of the 4 A's. You have to be aware of your issue. Now, usually when you talk about a medical condition, you're aware. Your sugars are too high, your head's pounding, your back hurts, you're anxious, you're depressed, you're aware. But we'll see in the next medicine wheel, and I'll get to that in a minute, we want deeper awareness at this stage, but this is the first stage. The next is to allow, and again, this is where if you could have done it with your human mind and your human mindset, it would have been handled by now. We need something bigger than ourselves. We need a connection to forces that are unseen. Call that God, call that spirit, call that power animals. We need to allow help from higher and other universal vibratory frequencies. The next step is to act. So you're aware of your issue, you've asked for help, you've gotten your allies, then you're going to take an action. And I teach many of these actions in my book. Are we going to clear your energy field? Are you going to make a new commitment? Are you going to do a fire ceremony? Are you going to, in other words, there's actions. And then for anything to change, and those of you who are therapists or work in the behavioral realm, you need to affirm it. You need to repeat this intention, this prayer, this ritual, keep that energetic alive in order for it to become well seated within your energy field and life. You can say you do it and you do it and you do a little action, you forget about it. Sorry, stuff isn't going to easily change. So let's move to the next slide. What I love, this is my favorite of all. To allow is to bring in personal, spiritual, and energy helpers. This can be the subconscious, the higher self, the soul, God, angels, nature spirits, devas, power animals, and we'll come later to the concepts of sacred space and Aini. So I'll tell you a quick story about power animals. When I was training in the Four Winds, we were doing a visualization, and we were taken to an underground cave. Well, I was in the darkness, and it was not fun, and it was uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, a huge tawny puma appeared. And he stood up in the cave and found an opening like a skylight at the top and stretched himself up that he actually touched the stars. This was a transcendent moment for me. And what was interesting is that later, when we were taught about jaguar as a power animal, the jaguar is the rainbow bridge, the bridge between life and death. So here is this tawny puma literally giving me the bridge out of this dark cave up to the stars. Well, that was a transcendent moment and a connection that had deep meaning to me. Another time I was with a spiritual group traveling to Sedona, met with a metaphysician there who took us on a trip in the Red Rocks to see the ley lines that he had intuited. And he said that he'd been working with dragons. Well, I'm not never was a magical, didn't know anything about magical beings. And he said, dragon. Well, okay. So we sat on the rocks and we did a meditation to connect to a dragon. I have to tell you, something big happened. Out of the earth, I felt a current of energy so powerful, and yet I wasn't afraid. And because he had told me we were connecting to dragons, and because probably I'm a good visualizer, I like a movie in my head, I saw this celadon green, female, gorgeous dragon. And I connected, and I realized that what he was connecting us to were creative forces of the earth. I could feel it. I could feel this energy, whether it's really a dragon or not. That's the picture and the name I gave it. But there are these creative forces of the universe, and this was earth-centered and powerful, powerful. Well, to tell you, here comes a woo-woo moment. A couple weeks later, I'm back from Sedona, and I'm doing an energy session with my sister in the quiet, no talking. And I'm at a sticky place where I sense something that we need to shift. And I said to the dragon, whom I had said to in Sedona, will you come home with me? And I said, can you help me? And all of a sudden, there was this celadon dragon, and then this iridescent peacock feather, also female dragon, and a small cobalt blue male dragon. Now, if you say, okay, I don't believe in dragons, just think of it as energies, currents of colorful ribbons of energy. And all of a sudden, everything in the energetics I sensed around my sister shifted. So we finished up the session. I said, how was that? She said, it was wonderful. I said, well, I had a sticky place. I asked my dragon to come. She said, oh yeah, 3 of them came. There was a green one and a purple one and a blue one. Now, I don't know how you can blow off a connection like that. For me, I can't. So that's why I do believe there are currents of energy in the unseen world that we all are connected to. So don't go poo-poo too quickly about things, these woo-woo things. So let's move on. This is a quote from my book, The Ability to Shift Something. And again, in this medicine wheel of actions, we're trying to shift something. It is extremely difficult and perhaps even impossible for people to make any progress in improving a health condition if they are unwilling to consider new possibilities, that's the allow, or to make any critical changes, that's the act. If there is an openness to not only allow and act, but to affirm, to establish new habits instead of hoping for a quick fix, patients are much more likely to achieve improved health. This next medicine wheel that I intuited does overlap with the medicine wheel of the interactions, but it's another layers of what you can see. And it's called the medicine wheel of inner tasks. Again, starting at the 6 o'clock position. You have to have intuition about your illness, to be aware, but at a deeper level. And I teach techniques on how you can build your intuition and get messages about what's really going on. Then you have to amplify your power. And that's where you ask your helpers to come in. That's where you allow forces and energies that are bigger than you, wiser than you, more powerful than you to come and help. Then you set an intention. Now, this is a big deal, and I spend time about this in my book. Your intention, we'll talk about that a little bit in more detail. Your intention is key to the shift. And then you do ritual. And again, I teach rituals. Some that are just rituals are fun. We'll talk about that in a minute. Intuition is an important step in awareness of any issue. And when you are shifting yourself into right brain, when you calm down, meditation, relaxation, quiet time, then you're able, what I call it, hearing the whispers of spirit. And then you see things and feel things and know things. So once you've got your amplification, then you set your intention. Now, to me, intention is a laser-focused arrow. Why is it an arrow and why is it laser-focused? It is every part of your being is on the same page. So your emotions, let's say your emotions say, oh, I really want another boyfriend, I really do. But your mind is going, well, the last few ones I had were jerks, so I'm not sure I do. You're not coherent in that. So setting an intention to have a boyfriend, you're discordant in your whole being. A real intention is laser, mind, body, and spirit. And you pin it to the target of your dreams. And I teach how you really hone this. So some people say, oh my God, I need a new job. I need to get out of this one. So the whole thing is that you want to get out of this. Well, okay, supposing the universe kicks you out of that, but where do you really want to land? Just getting out isn't really the goal. The goal is to land somewhere where you feel vital, you feel important, you feel that you're satisfied with the work you do, and you're financially secure. So finding the right intention. The intention is not, oh my God, get me out of this horrible job. It's about, please let me be somewhere where I am appreciated, respected, satisfied, and financially secure. Do you see the difference? Can you feel it? A good intention is fueled by your life force. Again, every part of you coherent. And I believe that your power of your intention is amplified by the divine. And that's that amplification step, all of the unseen helpers. And remember, you have to be honest with yourself. And that's why being in the quiet time and the intuitions and really tracking, you want to get rid of your back pain. Okay, that's probably true. You do. But then it doesn't happen. Well, what happened when you had back pain? You didn't have to carry anything. Everybody stepped in to help you because you had bad pain. So maybe you don't really want to give it up. You get some goodies out of that. So this is a step where takes courage to be brutally honest with yourself. When you do these things to really lock them in, there are powerful processes, and these are rituals. For me, a ritual energizes the intention. And it's more powerful when it's done in sacred space and when you are totally present, mind, body, soul. For me, when you do a ritual and you are fully present, you enter a vortex. And oftentimes rituals have been done by thousands of people for thousands of years. So you are stepping into an energetic pattern that is made stronger by the fact that it's been done so many times. We talk about in shamanism sacred space. So what makes a space sacred? What is sacred space? Sacred space to me is where you are in communication with your higher self or your power animals or your dragons or God. And you are fully present, connecting with the intention and what you really want to accomplish, and you're about to do a ritual. So it's more than a location, but it can be made better by certain locations, hence the power spots of the world. Machu Picchu, the Wailing Wall, the pyramids, Chaco Canyon. Those powerhouses of places, again, thousands of people visiting there and connecting thousands of times. I believe this is where your energies join the realm of spirit, and it accesses the part of you that is eternal and that is one with all of creation. And then you've got the power. You are coherent in your physical, your emotional, your mental, and your spiritual. And you are locked in, connected to the unseen world, to the universal field, which is probably where God lives. I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. Sacred space is wonderful. So a quote on the next, a quote from my book. Sacred space can be accessed through prayer, meditation, and being out in nature, experiencing quiet time. Quiet time is not automatically sacred. Quiet time becomes sacred when you declare your thoughts are now going to be from the deepest well inside yourself, where you wish for the highest outcome as a result of your work. In other words, you are setting aside any fears or doubts, trusting in spirit, and opening to possibility. For me, in my quiet space, I have a few talismans, my little helpers. Some people have a prayer bundle. I have a prayer bundle. But when I sit, even when I'm doing my radio shows or my Zoom calls with my spiritual community, I have some stones with me. One is a bear, that's part of my power animal crew, a stone that represents dragon, and obsidian that, at least in the Mayan culture, represents purification and protection. So those kinds of things, when you're present, you want to bring in all those pieces that you feel protected, that you feel allied. Anyway, that I love sitting with those. The other concept to think about when we do these interactions is the concept of Ayni. A-Y-N-I, Ayni. It means right relationship. It's important when you ally with the unseen. So you don't want to be a taker. You have to be a giver as well. Well, when I first started learning, I said to myself, how can I give anything of any value to something so much bigger than myself? And every time I've entered into a quiet time and a dialogue to say, thank you for giving to me, what may I give back? Every time the answer has been, take what you have learned and basically be better in the world. Go be better in the world. So I wasn't asked to sign away my firstborn or promise to tithe 50% of my income. I was asked to take this and make the world better. And all of us can do that. So that's a really good give and take. On the next slide. To maintain your sacred relationship with the energies of the universe, the forces of the unseen, or the power of your allies, you need to stay in balance. Everything you receive or ask to receive should be balanced by what you give away or give back. You cannot be a taker out of balance with being a giver. This is an unsustainable relationship with the universe. And then the next concept on the next slide is dialogue. And I was taught this really well by my teacher, Carl Greer, powerful, powerful shaman, Jungian analyst, accomplished businessman. And he taught me this. And this is where you're willing to have a conversation with your higher self, with your spirit helpers, with the universal field, and then listen. We humans nowadays don't do that so well, and trust. So that's when I get these, I sit and I say, okay, and you can practice this. And I teach you how to do this and say to the dragon, what do you have to tell me today? And then I'll get something and I'll go, well, what does that mean? I don't understand. And I'll wait for the answer. So this is really a sacred encounter where you're listening and you're taking in new data and you're assessing. And again, you're in balance when you're dialoguing. So here's a list on the next slide. Here is what you might be thinking about, and all these things that I have talked to you about today. What do I need to be aware of? What is my intuition telling me? What do I need to allow or release to spirit? How can I feel and then amplify a connection to spirit and my spirit helpers so I can receive their help and insights? What action do I need to take now? What intention am I setting? What do I need to affirm through committing to a long-term plan of changing habits? And how do I energize the commitment using ritual? So on the final slide, the key takeaways that I think are important and probably my spiritual mission, my personal metaphysical mission is to help you know you are more powerful than you previously imagined. A relationship with spirit amplifies that power. So I encourage you to bring the mystical into your life and know that anything can be shifted. And I've given you a lot of tools in my book. And with those tools, I know you can change the outcome of what looks like a going over the cliff moment. So anyway, you are more powerful than you previously imagined. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Dr. Sharon Martin, author of Maximize Your Healing Power. Thank you.